يا زهر صلى الله علينا صلى الله علينا ريحانة نبينا صلى الله علينا صلى الله علينا صلى الله علينا ريحانة نبينا صلى الله علينا.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to our second episode of Second Thoughts here on Zainabiya Plus. Once again, I'm happy to introduce my three guests who are the same from last week: Brother Ali Abbas Datoo, Brother Mazaher Muraj, and Syed Zafar Abbas. And today we have a new topic that we're going to address. Today's topic is: are our scholars doing enough? And when I say this, I don't mean that they're not doing enough already. What I mean is, what can they do extra? We find that they are here and there, from Hawza back to here, back to Hawza, and they address us very well. But what else can they do for us, if anything? So let's start, Brother Ali Abbas Datoo. That point that I just mentioned, where are they? We find a lot of them go off to Qom, go off to Najaf, go off to Karbala, but we don't really see them come back. Would you say this is an issue that you've experienced, or would you say on the whole they have been coming back to address us?
It's not necessarily that they're not coming back, it's that we don't see them when they come back. Also, you mentioned that when they disappear, let's say, don't have contact, but nowadays it's much different, as there's technology, there's email, there's also long distance phone calling, although they might not have time for that as they're in their studying time. So yeah, they will always respond to email. Nowadays, internet connection everywhere is fast, broadband.
Sure.
And what it is isn't that when they're coming back, they're disappeared. They might be going to other places to spread knowledge to other people, let's say, who have had less of an opportunity to gain that knowledge. But we don't understand, because we've had everything handed on the plate and everything's been there for us. Whereas other people might not have had that opportunity, and now let's say they have the funding to get the opportunity, they're bringing the speaker to them.
I mean, saying that, I just look to you, member or student, I should say, of the Hawza in Najaf. Alhamdulillah, you've been there for 2 years now, I believe, and you still managed to come home for Easter and Christmas, probably for the Easter eggs and Christmas presents. But what spurred you on to come back, and how have you felt coming back? Has it disrupted your studies, or has it been fine since?
Yeah, I think there is an encouragement in some quarters of the Hawza. The opinion is divided, obviously, but there's an encouragement from certain quarters that people who are studying should go out frequently back to their communities, so they're in touch of what's going on. Some people feel that maybe it's disruptive to the learning, and you can see both sides of the argument. I feel that it is certainly important for people to go back to their respective communities, whatever community they're coming from, because they owe them a favour, if you like, in the sense that they are the community that they've come from, and that is the community that they most know about and most understand, and thus most are able to help. In terms of whether it's my studies, most of the time that I've been back is usually been holidays.
Sure.
So not in that sense, but more particularly, I think the point that the other side of the argument that it disrupts the studies could be seen in a way that even while it is the holidays, you can still continue studying. And perhaps most importantly, not everybody, in fact most people, don't have the resources to be coming back and forth so frequently. So that is something that's obviously outside of their control, but it comes back to the community-scholar relationship, which hopefully we can go on to. But just as a, to be a bit controversial, it is a two-way relationship. So when we ask, are the scholars doing enough for us, then we also have to ask, is the community doing enough for them?
Sure.
So it is a two-way sort of street.
Sure. I mean, Mazaher, you're obviously studying an MA in Islamic Studies at the moment. Would you find that when teachers do come back, you're encouraged to go and visit them, or do they come towards you, maybe take a couple of lessons instead? I don't know how it works. So what would you say the interaction is when they do come back?
It certainly is very encouraging for when someone who's gone off to study Islamic studies. It certainly is encouraging for when they do come back,
Sure.
because it motivates us to go and see them, because we know that they're only here for a short period of time, and that in itself is an encouragement to go and see them. However, when they do leave, it disrupts the consistency that we have with them, and it kind of
You lose that kind of connection.
exactly. It severs a relationship that we
Definitely.
have built over them over a number of weeks or months,
Sure.
or however long they're here for.
Sure, definitely. I mean, I find occasionally, I'd say occasionally I'll use that word, and I use that word for a reason, that when they do come back, or when they come back for good, I find some of them do make that extra effort to come out and seek the youth and see how they are doing, because they obviously understand it's not just the adults that are Muslim, it's the whole community. And I do find that some of them do come back and make an extra effort to ensure that they do come and speak to the youth. But Abbas, from your perspective, do they do enough? When we look for speakers for extra programs outside of the programs organised by the communities, do we find that they are available, or do you think that we struggle to find them?
I don't think it's really a struggle to find them, because there are a variety of speakers. You can go to anywhere and find a speaker, really, but it depends on how they give their lecture. As in, it depends on if their lecture is a bit too advanced for some of the youth.
Definitely.
Then the youth won't find that they can approach him, as they might not know what he was saying. And it's for me, when I don't particularly know a speaker, I find it quite scary or intimidating to approach the speaker later on and ask him questions. And there's always that group of circle, and I never get my chance to ask the question. But I guess if I try harder, I can. It's not them who's not trying hard. It's me. It's me.
I mean, would you say, you personally, do you have more methods of communication with them? You mentioned video calls. Are there any other methods of communication that we could perhaps use? And I know you know which one I'm hinting about, that we do use regularly.
There seems to be a trend of Twitter
Very nicely
nowadays.
done.
More people are using Twitter. It's become a bigger social networking site, and it's fairly easy to get in contact with someone. All you do is mention them, and they can see it, and they tend to reply. So nowadays it's easier to communicate with them. And we should be taking advantage of this
Sure.
technological advance, and we should be making use of it. And this is how we need to step up and take the first initiative into
Towards them,
yeah.
I mean, saying that you yourself are a frequent user of Twitter, I won't mention your name just in case, I don't want you getting more followers than me, of course. But would you find that in the domain of 140 characters, you find if a youth asks you a question, or even for an adult asks you a question for whatever reason, those 140 characters are nowhere near to even say Imam Ali alayhi salam, because characters can't define such a man. I mean, how would you say that we can use that, but at the same time not cut those ties where you come home for dinner and we sit and discuss? How would you say we can promote this as well?
Yeah, I think what is unique about Twitter as opposed to maybe some of the other social networking sites is it's a particularly an open domain, and it limits you with the 140 characters. But I think also because of that, what it is effective for is just for maybe breaking that barrier, like Brother Ali Abbas points out about feeling intimidated or afraid to approach this person. And if you tweet them, you sort of sometimes you feel less intimidated online. And once that initial ice is broken, then you can communicate with that person much more easily
Freely.
and much more freely. I mean, I get people adding me on Facebook and following me on Twitter. Most people I don't even know, and if you equate that with real life, it's much rarer for someone who completely don't know to actually just come up to you and start a conversation, but it's much more easier for them to add you on Facebook or follow you on Twitter, and that way break the ice, to then when you do meet them in real life, that initial ice is broken, and therefore it's much more comfortable for them to communicate with you and you to communicate with them.
I mean, Mazaher, using that example of intimidation that Syed and Abbas have touched upon, would you say almost the clothes that some of our speakers wear, of course on the minbar, it's only right that they wear the amama, the abaya, etc., etc., but would you say when they see you around, when they come to people's houses, or even just interact with the youth in a brief discussion circle or whatnot, should they still be wearing these kinds of clothing? Because surely this could lead to intimidation, or should they put on a suit and shirt and just come along to the event?
Well, the libas that these scholars wear was the libas of the Prophet, which is a sunnah. So it's a sunnah, so it's a good thing to do. However, I do believe there is a time and a place to wear such clothes. For example, if they were to go onto the minbar, then of course it would be appropriate to wear that type of clothing, since it distinguishes the speaker from the listeners. And if someone were to try and look for a speaker, then they know where to turn because they know how the speaker would look.
Definitely.
However, if they were to approach the speaker or lecturer or scholar on the streets, then I don't think, personally, I don't think that sort of clothing would suit well with this society. I think the Prophet would dress as his society dressed.
Sure. Abbas, from your experience, do you find yourself when you are at mosque and you want to ask the speaker after he finishes, do you personally find it intimidating when you have to address a man in such great clothing of importance? Do you find it intimidating or not?
It's not that it's intimidating, it's just like I'd go say salam to him, but then if you turn around and there's a whole queue behind you and they're waiting, and then you forget your question, and so it's not only that factor, there's other factors that take into account that there's other people waiting to ask questions. So what could be done would be to have more question answer sessions where just free question answers, not like a specific topic, although it makes it harder for the speaker to get, like, not that he needs to study.
To prepare
to prepare and find the hadith that he needs to answer the questions. But
No, I understand where you're coming from, but you've touched upon my next point, which was, do they even spend enough time with us? Both youth, adults alike, do they actually spend enough time with us? Or are they, alhamdulillah, forever engrossed within their studies? As you read one page, you want to read the next. Should they be saying, okay, when I finish this, now it's time to go and address the youth or go and address the people? Say, what's your take on this?
No, I think it's particularly important for the scholars as a whole to be in touch with both what's going on in the world and with the community as a whole, youth and adults. I mean, we might put it as a complaint that they don't interact with the youth enough, but I mean, if you speak to the adults, I think some of them would give you similar kinds of criticism, if you like, about them not interacting enough. And I think that is particularly important, that they do make a point of interacting with people.
Sure.
Old or young, and perhaps more question answer sessions, as Abbas points out. Perhaps just informal discussions rather than in addition to the scheduled lectures and things. So just an informal discussions where you realise that this person is still an ordinary person, he's still a human being just like everyone else. and that he is able to, you know, have fun. He's able to be relaxed. He's able to engage with you on your level. And you know, this if that initial barrier is broken, and you know, you see this person is able to be like anybody else, any other person in the public, then you can now consider them as a friend, someone you can have confidence in, ask those questions that you can't really ask your mom and dad, and that way, you know, you take them off the pedestal, if you like.
Definitely.
Which sometimes is a problem, is part of that whole inhibition and intimidation part. Of course, as far as respect is concerned, as far as, you know, their position in society is concerned, is obviously, you know, I think goes without saying.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of, you know, to remove the intimidation and inhibition that we might have with them, I think, you know, just the fact that you can interact with them on a more informal level, if that's done in an organized, you know, it's an organized environment, then that would certainly, I feel, would help both the scholar be able to realize, you know, this is what people need, and the people to, you know, obviously be more comfortable with that person.
On this point, actually, I don't think the problem is the interaction with the scholar. I think, because alhamdulillah, I've been fortunate to grow up in a community where we have Thursday programs every Thursdays, we have Friday programs almost every Fridays, we have Muharram, Ramadan, we have social programs, there's madrasa on Saturdays and Sundays. So alhamdulillah, there is plenty of interaction. However, I feel the problem is that scholars don't know what to interact with us about, because the generation of the youth is perpetual, and their interests change generation after generation. So the problem is they don't know what the youth like to talk about, or the affairs that they like to engage in.
Sure, no, that's a very, very good point. I mean, I was going to come to you in a question that I think only you would be able to answer at this point. Before, maybe 2 years ago, you were not studying Islamic studies, so you weren't having as much contact with these kind of scholars, and also maybe the content that you were learning in your university was nothing like the content you're learning now. Would you find that the way in which they speak on the minbar needs to be maybe dumbed down a little bit? And did you find that you were struggling to follow before you went to, or even not, you weren't able to follow as well as you do now, because now you're constantly surrounded by these kind of discussions, intellectual discussions? Would you say that maybe the people that embark on the pulpit need to bear in mind that those that they are addressing have just been to work, they've been lectured by their bosses, those have been schooled, been lectured by the teachers? Maybe they should tone it down a little bit and give the points out rather than give food for thought.
Well, every lecturer has their own style of speaking, and no doubt every person has their taste of the style they like to listen to from a lecturer. However, it is important that a lecturer is able to speak to all sorts of audiences, because we go to Majalis on the 10th of Muharram, there are kids sitting at the front or around the mosque, there's adults, there's the elders, there's ladies on the other side. So it's important that a lecturer is able to talk in a general sense rather than talk just to a specified audience.
Definitely. No,
But alhamdulillah, I feel that my going into Islamic studies as an academic degree has definitely helped me understand the lecturer's content a lot more.
Sure, sure. Abbas, would you say the quality of the content all round is up to the standard that we require? And when I say that, I don't mean their intellectual capability, because that would always be beyond us until we start studying. But would you say the quality in terms of the way that they, like we were just mentioning, deliver it, but also the kind of content that they do deliver? I know I find some speakers who very much go too spiritual for my liking, or too into history. Should they give a dose of a little bit for everyone, or should we keep to, like Mazaher was saying, the styles that they adopt? Some are known for their history, some are known for their jurisprudence. How would you prefer it?
Nowadays, lecturers, before they start the lecture, they give the topic, so it helps to know what the lecturer is talking about. Let's say on a Thursday night, there's no specific occasion, he just mentions the topic. But I guess that every person has a different type of lecture that they like listening to, and there's not that one lecture that everyone likes listening to. So it makes it difficult for the speaker to choose what type of lecture to give, and they do try to mix and match, put some of history and then some spirituality into the lecture, but it makes it very difficult to kind of, although I'm not an expert in this, to kind of like link it in together.
Yeah.
And they're not reading off a paper, it's all memorized knowledge. So we got to have sympathy for the speaker, and we got to understand that the difficulties that they go through, just to give us the knowledge.
Definitely. I mean, say you have first-hand experience of it. Do you prefer, when you're preparing for a topic, when you give it the topic, hopefully a week beforehand, not the night before, do you prefer to hit home on one part of the jurisprudence, one part of the tariq, one part of the akhlaqiyat that we can take, or do you like to delve into one of the ways and keep to it?
I like to, like you say, all speakers are conscious of the fact that there's going to be different types of people in the audience, different age groups and different levels of understanding. So I like to, as challenging as it can be, to try and have something that appeals to everyone.
Sure.
Generally what I do to get around the issue of different tastes is, if I'm doing a series of lectures, I will do a different topic every day, which will mean that hopefully it addresses various different tastes. So there'll be something on spirituality and something on history and something on jurisprudence and something on theology. So it's a mix, which will hopefully, if someone's not particularly interested in one topic, then maybe on day 5 they'll have something that interests them, or that they will find interesting. So I think that's one way around it that speakers have found to try and bring some variety into the lectures. But also, sometimes it is something that you consciously have to do, or realize, sometimes some of the terminology that we might use, or some of the words that we understand and we use quite commonly, but maybe most people are not so familiar with them. So sometimes you have to go into explanations of terminology and how words are used and so on and so forth. In summary, it is a challenging task in terms of bringing in new topics and keeping them engaging at the same time. But I think that over time we've been able to make that as an expectation, if you like, that there will be a topic and it will be pre-announced and people will know what it's going to be about, and it won't go off onto tangents, and not that there is time to, but that makes it more organized, which generally helps. I'm a listener first and a speaker second. So as a listener, it really helps when you're listening to somebody who is organized. Because you can follow their trail of thought, even if it's not the most interesting thing in the world and you're not particularly interested in it. It's just the fact that it's organized means that you can follow where they're trying to go with the topic, rather than something that's all over the place.
Ali Abbas, going almost from that point, so now instead of from in the mosque, now going outside the mosque or the centre, do you find that we see our scholars enough? Do they make an effort of coming out enough to come and see us in our own environments? Or rather, on the contrary, do we make enough of an effort to invite them to our own environments? Because I think we'd all agree, we may have all have had this experience at least once, where speakers come out with you somewhere, and they're not wearing any of the libas that they'll wear on the minbar. They're not there to give a lecture, they've just come out to socialise with you. And generally from there, conversations tend to divert a lot. You tend to learn a lot more from an intellectual, from a scholar, from a sheikh, when you're just having a casual conversation with them and they just put in these slight points. Would you say this is something that we need to improve upon as a community to encourage speakers to come out with us, or should they almost be willing to come out with us without even us having to tell them?
Well, firstly, what I say is there's no pleasing everyone. So if a speaker was to go out with a few people, there will always be someone else who will be left out, and the speaker can't please everyone. But like, let's say there's different places where you can take someone, like to the cinema. It depends though on the
content,
the mood, of course, or let's say to dinner. But as we are in this holy month of Ramadan, we can invite speakers for, I don't know, suhoor or futur, and have a conversation and invite other people as well, where they can talk to the speakers, just casual conversation, ask any questions they'd like to ask, maybe in public or in private as well. Give people that opportunity to converse with the speaker.
For sure. I mean, Mazaher, do you find that from where you study, you must be exposed to these speakers all over the place? Maybe you get fed up with them. No, I'm only kidding. Would you say that there is that extra effort where you can go out with them after class and stuff like that?
Yeah, alhamdulillah. I've noticed actually that spending time with speakers builds a relationship, and that's really important. That time spent with them and the building of the relationship, because then it enables you to be freer with the speaker. You won't be afraid to ask a question.
Yeah.
If you have a problem, you won't be afraid to turn to them for help. So it is definitely important for us to spend time with the scholars.
Okay, fantastic. Unfortunately, that is all we have time for this week, despite how engaging this discussion was. Please join us next week on Second Thought. We will have new guests, I am afraid, but no doubt the guests will be of the same caliber. No chance will they be better. Thank you very much for joining us. Inshallah, we'll see you next week. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.